Hi out there. This is Dr. Brett Pierce, child psychologist, coming at you with a fairly serious video. People have been asking me about how they should tell their kids, or if they should tell their kids, about what is going on in the country in terms of the civil unrest following the death of George Floyd and, sort of culminating with a lot of related events. So we're going to forego some of the usual kind of fun stuff, intro, and a few other things that we do, just out of respect to how serious the topic is. So, like you're probably used to hearing me say if you've been following my channel, it is important for us to be frank and clear and to help kids understand important subjects such as racism and the violence and unrest that is going on right now in many areas of the country. People often come to me and say, well, okay, Doc, how? How do I tell my kids about these things? And to an extent, I understand that question. But sometimes when we worry so much about how, it's not so much about the how, it's more about the if. If I tell my kid, then I'm hurting them, or I'm causing them pain, or I'm exposing them to something that kids somehow shouldn't be exposed to. Now, I certainly agree that we don't want to bombard kids with all the news and the violence and the actual gory details about everything. But I do believe that the clear healing that we need to do, probably as a species, but let's just go ahead and say as a country, when it comes to issues of racism, I think that healing needs to start at home. And it needs to start at home by cultivating open discussions about the realities of racism with our kids. I think very often what happens is we have a sort of don't ask, don't tell kind of thing that goes on with a lot of important subjects with kids. I believe this with other, maybe not necessarily related subjects like death, divorce, things like that. I would even believe it if someone that the kid knows and is close to has committed suicide, and I would want to use the word suicide with the kid. So I'm not really going to spend a lot of time in this video trying to prescribe to people and to parents exactly what to say, but more that it is important for us to say something and to not mince words. If your kid has questions about what happened with George Floyd and what's going on in the country, I think we should be pretty frank. The word died is okay, the word racism is okay. I mean, it's important for kids to hear the truth. Now, some people come back and say, well, my kid is not old enough, or I don't want to hurt my kid by talking about these subjects. And my question for you is, according to what? I mean, when is a kid old or not old enough to know about these important things and to see the effect that racism has on people of color? I think that sending the message to kids that we want to talk about these subjects and learn and grow together is very important, because they're powerful subjects indeed. And very often, if we don't talk with kids about important subjects, then they end up learning them from, movies and cartoons and from their friends at school and things like that. And that's not necessarily the best way to go. We also don't want to wait. You don't want to wait until your kids start to ask about what happened and about the violence and the protests and the unrest. You don't want to wait until your kid brings it up. Why? Well, the answer is very simple. Because when important things happen and we don't say something, we being the adults in the position of leadership with kids, in the position of power, in the position of we're taking the lead, then it sends the message that we don't talk about this stuff. And so it can be like an elephant in the room. In fact, I think there's a lot of elephants in the room in our culture at large, and I think that we struggle to address them, and there's a lot of reasons for that. And we could really go down that rabbit hole and it would take up way too much time. The bottom line is, I really do think that we should be talking with kids about what's going on. I think it is very clear that we as a people need to heal, and we need some cultural change in order to help foster that healing. And that healing needs to come through frank, open discussion, not from trying to mince words or anything like that. So at any rate, I certainly don't pretend to have all the answers about everything, and the subject of racism is far bigger than just a video on YouTube by a child psychologist could ever tackle, particularly since I'm not a person of color. However, I do think that it is all of our responsibility to begin this discussion and to help our kids understand what's going on and why it is important. So please don't worry so much about how, and worry more about now. Now is the time for us to talk, and now is the time for us to cultivate this discussion. Now is the time for us to cultivate the kind of confrontation of really important problems that are not easy to talk about, that needs to happen in order for us to all grow. So please do talk with your kids about what's going on. Please don't wait for them to come to you. So at any rate, thank you for listening. It's a really serious and important time, I think, in America's history, and I think in world history. And I'm hoping it will spark some needed change. So thanks for listening. Signing off.